Hello flying family, welcome to the Aviator Show. My name is Micah Stevens and today I'm going to walk you through the steps of getting your reserve parachute correctly mounted onto your machine. So this can be an intimidating process, but this video is meant to make the steps super simple and easy to understand as well as execute. So grab your coffee, your motor, and the reserve, as well as a piece of fishing line. In this case, I've got an old piece of glider line here that I'm going to be using. We'll start out with a quick orientation of my reserve as it sits mounted to my harness. The reserve I have here is an Ozone Angel Square, and it's a beefy 140 kilogram chute. And this reserve happens to be non-steerable. So it uses a Y-bridle configuration here with either primary connection point going to the shoulder straps left and right. And the secondary connection point where the reserve lives is down here by my right hip. Since I fly a left-handed throttle, I have my right dominant strong hand for the mission of throwing the reserve should that time ever come. If you fly with a lap mount reserve, the process to getting it connected to your harness is very similar. You'll be able to intuit the process as we cover the steps in this video. Continuing on with our orientation, we've got the bridle here that runs right into a nice sheathing that's directly connected to the harness. And this sheathing is designed to break away in the event that I need to throw. And you can see if I didn't have this sheathing here, I would have all of this excess bridle that could very easily get back into places that we don't want it to. So after exiting this sheathing here, either bridle runs to either shoulder strap. On the right shoulder, up top, there's another bit of sheathing here that will break away when the time comes. And then it routes to my left shoulder. Now we'll go ahead and transition into the reserve itself as it sits in the container, how to get your reserve packaged into this container and then back onto our machine. All right, so we've got our reserve container and our reserve. Now going through a quick orientation on our reserve. It is covered in this orange bag. They call this a diaper bag, and the diaper basically does the job of keeping the reserve from physically deploying, and it does that by taking a small bite in the reserve lines themselves inside of this bungee. This black bungee is attached to the bottom flap down here, and it runs through 3 different eyelets on these 3 flaps, and this is how it keeps itself from deploying. So if your bite in lines here were to be released from this black bungee, now your reserve is officially deployed. Now the side you're looking at now is the bottom of the reserve. We're now going to flip the reserve over very carefully, and we'll find a little small loop tab here, and we're going to go ahead and take our reserve handle, pull it out. And the way this installs is very easy. We're just going to feed this big loop through the small loop, pull that loop all the way through, open the handle loop, pass the handle itself through, and this is what they call doing the girth hitch. You pull it tight, and your handle is connected to the diaper bag. Now, as tempting as it may be to use this handle to pick up the reserve, don't do it, because if you were, you'd be inviting this black bungee on the bottom to release that precious bite in lines that we've got there. So we always handle the reserve with 2 hands, kind of like a warm loaf of bread. Going through a quick orientation on the container itself. So we've got 4 flaps that are labeled 1, 2, and 3. Labels on the inside here. And then you'll see on the outside of flap number 1, we've got this yellow tab. And this yellow tab is going to feed through the eyelets on flap 2 and flap 3 on one side, and then we'll do the other side. Since I have a right-hand reserve, the lines are going to exit stage left from my container. If I had a left-hand reserve, they would be exiting stage right. So we'll go ahead and pick up our reserve and set it on top of the container with the bite in the lines side down. And then we'll have these bridles exit stage left. Now, with our reserve oriented correctly on top of the container, it's a matter of closing up the flaps. So we'll go ahead and work the left side now, and then we'll work the right side later. I'm going to close flap number 1. I'm going to feed my assistant line that I have here through this little yellow loop. And this yellow loop does the job of holding these flaps closed, as we'll see in a minute. I'm going to follow the steps. We've got flap number 2 here, feeding that through the eyelet. And then flap number 3 comes through. And we just have to pull this nice and tight. And there's our yellow loop. We're going to do the careful job now of guiding our plastic safety wire through that yellow tab and then into the sheathing right there. That's meant to keep everything streamlined. Awesome. We've got one half done. Now we're going to carefully remove your line from this yellow loop. I fed the line through. Flap number 2 here. Start pulling flap number 1 into number 2. The first side's easy because it kind of presses the reserve out of the container. The other side ends up being a little bit tighter. So I'm going to tuck flap number 1 here underneath flap number 3 before pulling it nice and tight. There he is. Okie dokie. We'll keep some good tension on that. Okay, so we have gotten our plastic safety wire in through our yellow loops and then into the safety wire sheathing here. This sheathing is an important step. Don't miss that, because if it rests on the outside, it can very easily get pushed through this yellow loop. So having the sheathing in here protects anything from bumping it back and through and deploying your reserve without you intending to. Okay, next we'll go ahead and tuck our handle tabs into their own sheathing on the left side and the right side. And then lastly, we've got this sheathing that will cover our handle, and that does the job of keeping everything nice and smooth and streamlined. Again, you want a reserve that is low profile and as tight as possible. All right, and since I love you guys, I'm going to demonstrate how easily this reserve can be deployed. So if I simply grab the handle and drop it, boom, that's a deployed reserve. Again, if your reserve deploys without you meaning to, it can cause some detrimental damage to both your equipment and you. So every time before you fly, you want to make sure your reserve is correctly stowed so this does not happen accidentally. I'll do this later. Let's skip to the good part. All right, friends, time for the grand finale. We have our reserve in the container. Nice work. It's time to get the container onto the harness. So we've got the zipper that's going to start on the right side of our container, and this is going to start feeding on the bottom corner of our harness down here. So before you start, little pro tip here, go ahead and fold back this Velcro from the zipper. That's going to make it much easier for you to actually get that zipper securely fastened onto the harness. So Velcro's back. We have our frame connection strap here that runs from our shoulder strap down. We're going to make sure that that is sitting on top. That way it doesn't get in the way of our zippering job here. I like to just hold the reserve container from this buckle as I start working the zipper down low. Getting it started is always the hardest part. But apparently the camera likes me today, so we're off to a great start here, working our zipper all the way up. I like to go ahead and get our harness strap routed through the plastic buckle that lives on our container, and that is going to keep the zipper from unzipping as you do the Velcro on the zipper. The Velcro zipper cover. And we'll just fold that back over onto the harness, soft Velcro, and we won't forget about our last harness buckle connection down here. Nice. Our reserve is in the container. Our container is on the harness. Now it's time to get our bridles situated correctly. One thing that my Dudek reserve container has is a little Velcro loop here that's going to do a couple things for me. It's going to hold the orientation of my bridles, And it's also going to do the job of not allowing any excess to get pulled out of the container as I go about my life. Now I'd like you to note a very important routing detail. These bridles are going over the swing arm before going into the sheathing and up to the shoulder straps. Let me say that again. These bridles have to go over the swing arm. If it were to go under, now we've got a deployment that is holding us sideways. And keep in mind, when you land under a reserve, you're going to be doing it fast. So make sure that you're landing feet first, and the way to do that is to make sure that these bridles are routing over the swing arm before going up to the shoulders. Okay, repositioned here. So we've got our bridles coming up and over the swing arm, and we'll go ahead and just work one at a time. It doesn't matter which bridle goes to which shoulder strap, because this is a non-directional or non-steerable reserve. We'll take this one and we'll route it to the far shoulder strap first. We'll go up and over. Now before I connect it to the harness, I'd like to show you the proper way to orient your rapid link, and that is with the gate to the inside. So the opening is to the inside and the nut closes down with gravity. That is the correct orientation for anything hardware related like this. That's going to connect to my harness right through the red loop, and then we'll go ahead and close that. We'll route our bridle back over our shoulder. This little Velcro sheathing here, again, this is just designed to keep things tidy and close to my harness as it routes back into the reserve container. So we'll go ahead and close up that, and then we're going to route that down the other side of our harness. So we've got the sheathing on this side. We'll go ahead and peel that off. Before I close up this sheathing, we'll go ahead and get our other bridle connected to our other shoulder strap here. Gate to the inside, and we want to make sure that that nut is closing down with gravity, so we're going to flip it like this. Feed it onto our harness, and then close that nut, route the bridle back up. And you'll notice now that I've got quite a bit of slack to deal with here. So we're going to go ahead and just do one bridle at a time, but we're going to take up some slack just by making zigzags in our bridles here. Bigger zigzags for the close bridle, smaller ones for the far. And then we'll go ahead and sushi wrap, if you will, our bridles. Getting as much contact as possible on our sheathing. Nice. Before I get too carried away, I don't want to forget to tighten up these guys. Now with the rapid links nice and cinched, we can go ahead and close our shoulder strap sheathing again. And voila! Now for the ever important step of pre-flighting our reserve. Again, anything that you put onto your unit becomes something that can fall off. So make sure that you are pre-flighting any gizmos or safety devices on your machine. So with our reserve, it's more or less quick and easy to check it. We really just want to make sure that it's streamlined, there's nothing protruding or snagging or starting to fall out. Our plastic safety wire here should be going through this yellow tab and then into the sheathing that is meant for that wire. Same thing on the other side. We want to make sure that this Velcro strap is fully covering our handle. That's just your backup. And that our handle tabs are fully tucked into the handle sheathing. When it comes to our bridles, we want to make sure that our security Velcro loop isn't coming undone and that there is now minimal excess from the reserve container into our sheathing, that those bridles are routed over the swing arms, and that my swing arm can move freely without pulling the reserve bridles out from the bag itself. Kind of tight. I'd like to see a little bit more slack allow that swing arm to articulate fully without too much pressure onto the bridles there. And then occasionally checking your rapid links at your primary connection point. I don't worry about it too often, but every now and then I'll check to make sure that they're still good and tight. And that, my friends, is gonna do it. Congratulations on installing your reserve. Comment any questions or thoughts that you have. Don't forget to leave a like. Thank you for watching the Aviator Show, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.